9:30 p.m.
Hello, I'm Motelli Edwards on News 5 tonight.
This is an ongoing housekeeping habit.
A call for residents, neighbours and town councils to keep HDB common areas clutter-free to prevent future fires.
Type 2 is starting to appear, some as young as 8 years old.
Hence, a new health program to stave off diabetes starting with kids in preschool. Election results in France and Greece raise fears of a resurgent Eurozone crisis spooking stock markets. And the alleged Bali bomb maker expresses remorse but insists he played a big part in the attacks. The coordinating chairman for PAP Town Councils, Teo Ho Pin, is urging more cooperation to keep HDB common areas free of clutter and potential fire hazards. This follows recent fires involving items left at lift landings. Last year, the second highest number of residential fires also involved discarded items. This is what remains of the fire that took place on Sunday night. Residents on the 8th floor of Block 52 Toa Payoh Lorong 6 are left to clean up the soot that remains. It's the second fire in a week, after the one at Marsiling last Friday, which also involved discarded items at lift landings.
Over there, I put my plate and then my rice cooker. Thing, for the kitchen one, and then all my dress or everything I put there.
61-year-old Madam Saripa says there's just not enough space in her house. The town council had also issued her a $50 fine a few days before the fire and had asked her to remove her things.
Here stay 8%, and then the thing you see so many. And then if I put my thing there, where I want to sleep, where the children want to learn, want to study, where? You know what? That's why I put there.
Neighbours say they had not complained about the clutter before the fire.
到现在那是没有投诉啦，因为我们是这边嘛，对吗？所以以后要投诉了，怕了哦。
The authorities say there has not been a noticeable increase in the number of complaints from residents, but it's hoped more will play their part in ensuring the area is tidy.
This is an ongoing housekeeping habit. If you flush off the corridors once, tomorrow, some residents may clutter up the corridors again. So I think you need cooperation from the residents. At the same time, you also need constant watch by the neighbours to actually keep the town councils informed of such obstructions so that the town councils can react fast enough to remove such bulky items.
Mr. Teo says town councils will reach out to residents through posters, flyers and online. More children in Singapore are now suffering from type 2 diabetes. That refers to diabetes that's not genetic but acquired through, for instance, an unhealthy lifestyle. The Health Promotion Board says they now account for up to 33% of childhood diabetes cases, up from 10% a decade ago. So the board has launched a program called Cherish Junior to get kids in preschool to adopt healthier habits.
Eating fruits and vegetables may be part of a healthy diet, but what's equally important is food proportioning. Under the program, nutritionists will teach cooks from childcare centres to prepare meals to meet the child's daily intake of the 4 food groups.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
Teachers will also introduce interactive lesson plans for children to learn health-related topics. And some of these children will take on the teacher role themselves.
Part of the health framework involves these preschool ambassadors. They've been selected and trained by their teachers to champion health-promoting habits such as eating healthy and physical activity.
I asked my friend to finish the fruit and vegetables. When my friends are angry, I will stay cool and happy.
So far, 91 of more than 1,400 preschools in Singapore have applied to be certified a Cherish Junior Preschool. There are hopes the program will result in a drop in the number of children with diabetes.
About 8% of our preschooler, in fact, are overweight. I'm concerned about this because overweight will predispose our children to type 2 diabetes. In the past, it used to be type 1, which is genetic. But now type 2 is starting to appear, some as young as 8 years old.
HPB aims to roll out the program to 140 preschools by the end of the year. expand this to 420 schools by 2015.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry is expanding its weekly spot checks for hand, foot and mouth disease. It will add to the list of private enrichment centres such as tuition centres and language schools. Right now, only childcare centres and kindergartens are inspected, but the ministry says it's increased the frequency of inspections and is working with the Education Ministry to ensure high standards of hygiene in primary schools. It's also urging schools and parents to get children to wash their hands regularly and not share eating utensils. In world news, renewed uncertainty in the Eurozone after voters in France and Greece handed their ruling parties defeat overnight. It's an apparent rejection of austerity measures which were adopted to slash public debt. Germany has ruled out any renegotiation of hard-won agreements to fight the debt crisis. But Chancellor Angela Merkel played down fears of Franco-German ties turning sour after French President-elect François Hollande vowed to rework the EU's fiscal pact on cutting deficits. The two leaders are expected to hold talks soon in Berlin after Mr. Hollande formally assumes the presidency on May 15th. He won 52% of the vote to deny Nicolas Sarkozy a second term.
France has voted for change. It's the first time in a generation that a Socialist Party candidate is elected president. François Hollande has never held public office, but many voters were drawn to his message of social justice, including his proposal to tax the rich by up to 75% and boost spending by 20 billion euros. The 57-year-old says it's time for France and Europe to focus on growth instead of austerity.
Dans toutes les capitales, au-delà des chefs de gouvernement et des chefs d'État, il y a des peuples qui, grâce à nous, espèrent, regardent vers nous et veulent en terminer avec l'austérité.
Je porte toute la responsabilité de cette défaite. Je vais vous dire pourquoi. Je me suis battu sur la valeur de responsabilité et je ne suis pas un homme qui n'assume pas ses responsabilités.
We have a huge international and European program, starting by a visit in Berlin to Madame Merkel. She invited the new president to come and visit her.
Mr. Hollande says he wants to renegotiate a Eurozone debt deal seen as a cornerstone of the region's stability.
Wir haben schon von Merkel-Hollande gesprochen. Allerdings ist das noch nicht mit Inhalt gefüllt. Dürfte bei Herrn Hollande ein bisschen geringer sein, weil er einfach nicht so ein lebhafter, sprunghafter Politiker ist, wie wir das von Sarkozy gewohnt sind.
A silver lining for Mr. Hollande is that his party is poised to win a majority in parliamentary elections next month, giving the socialists more power than ever before.
Meanwhile, Chancellor Merkel says Greece must stay on the course of reform if it's to keep getting bailout funds. This after stunning election results in the country. The two main parties, the Conservative New Democracy and Socialist PASOK, have lost their majority in parliament. Between them, the two pro-bailout parties got less than a third of the vote. A slew of smaller anti-austerity parties won bigger or first-time gains in parliament. Analysts say the instability means a second election may be on the cards. And you can see the impact of all this on Asian markets today. The region's key indices all closed firmly in negative territory. The Nikkei, Hang Seng and STI were down over 2% each in their biggest one-day falls this year. In Europe, France's CAC has pared earlier losses to turn positive, but Germany's DAX remains about 0.5% in the red. Elsewhere, Vladimir Putin has been sworn in as Russia's president for a historic third term. This follows his election victory in March. Mr. Putin was prime minister for the last 4 years. Today, he was also given the black nuclear suitcase that controls Russia's vast atomic arsenal. Parliament is expected to approve outgoing President Dmitry Medvedev to become PM. Outside the Kremlin, riot police rounded up 120 opposition activists for staging unsanctioned protests. Yesterday, a mass opposition rally ended in scuffles with police. Still to come on News 5, students in China hooked to IV drips in class. Tell you what's in them and why. Plus,
having this money in their pockets with nowhere to spend.
Singapore entrepreneurs flock to meet demand from China's young fashionistas.
Only
Welcome back. The alleged bomb maker for the 2002 Bali attacks has expressed remorse at his trial in Indonesia. Umar Patek is accused of being a central figure in the attacks, but he says he was a mere bit player who had no idea what was being planned and who never agreed with the militants' methods.
45-year-old Umar Patek was all smiles as he was escorted into court. Prosecutors accused the terror suspect of making bombs that devastated several Bali nightclubs in 2002. 202 people, mainly tourists, were killed by the explosives. Now, a decade after the attack, Umar has expressed remorse over his involvement in the killings.
Saya Hisham bin Ali Zain alias Umar Patek. Saya menyampaikan rasa penyesalan saya atas ikut andil dalam bom di Bali. Sekalipun peran saya sangat sedikit, namun saya bersalah. Saya melakukan itu bukan atas kemauan saya sendiri, tapi saya sudah disuruh gitu ya. Kemudian saya bersalah, saya ikut dan saya memohon maaf kepada seluruh keluarga korban dan juga kepada korban-korban yang lainnya, baik itu korban jiwa maupun korban material, baik itu yang warga negara Indonesia ataupun warga negara asing.
But the man who shares links to terror network Jemaah Islamiyah claims he had no idea what the bombs he made would be used for.
Saya waktu itu tidak tahu. Tidak tahu. Tapi ada disampaikan dengan saudara? Saya hanya diberitahu kepada oleh Mukhlas untuk membantu Syawat. Membantu Syawat, ya.
Mukhlas, one of several militants who masterminded the Bali bombings, was executed in 2008. During the years that followed the Bali bombings, Umar went on the run. Last year, he was finally arrested by Pakistani authorities in Abbottabad, the city where Osama bin Laden was discovered and later killed. The bomb expert also allegedly mixed chemicals for over a dozen explosives that detonated in 5 churches in Jakarta in 2000. That Christmas Eve attack killed 15 people.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has urged India to further cut imports of Iranian oil. She says the Asian giant should use its growing clout to help maintain international pressure on Iran over its nuclear program, which Western nations fear is a cover for building an atomic bomb. Mrs. Clinton is on a 3-day visit to India where she'll meet Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. India says it's already substantially cut imports from Iran, which is its second largest supplier of oil. But the US wants to see more action as it considers whether to exempt India from financial sanctions on countries that continue to buy oil from Iran. The issue is an irritant in bilateral ties. India doesn't want to be seen to be bowing to American pressure and is reluctant to become too reliant on Saudi Arabia for oil. The leader of Colombia is on a 3-day state visit to Singapore. President Juan Manuel Santos Calderon was welcomed by President Tony Tan Keng Yam at the Istana. He later held talks with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. The two men reaffirmed friendly ties and discussed how to further enhance bilateral cooperation. Earlier, the president had a new orchid hybrid named after him at the National Orchid Garden. In other news, SMRT is looking into how to improve passenger safety when trains break down. This emerged from the ongoing public inquiry into last December's major disruptions. And one possibility is opening the external door of the train driver's cabin to allow better ventilation. Right now, the door is only lowered to serve as an evacuation ramp. Another suggestion, installing CCTVs in train carriages to monitor passengers' well-being. There are already CCTVs in the driverless trains on the Circle Line, but this may be done for trains on the North-South and East-West lines as well. And last, SMRT plans to use a GPS to guide drivers of bus bridging services. The National Parks Board will be conducting extra checks on trees amid the ongoing stormy weather. You're looking at cars crushed by fallen trees in Changi yesterday. In fact, about 100 trees fell in wooded areas of Changi Beach Park over the weekend. Some had been entirely uprooted, and NParks says this was because of heavy rain that softened the soil. It's advising the public not to visit parks and nature reserves during or just after a storm. The Singapore University of Technology and Design has partnered the Defence Ministry to set up 2 research centres on defence and cyber security. This was announced by its Chancellor, President Tony Tan Keng Yam, at the university's first student inauguration ceremony today.
Welcome, class of 2015, our pioneers!
It's the day the 340 pioneer students of the Singapore University of Technology and Design have been waiting for. And they wasted no time in settling in.
We have spent the last couple of months trying to set up the student life as well as the next council to be elected. And it has been a very amazing journey because we are pioneering.
The enormous task of building a leading university from the ground up can, at times, seem overwhelming, but we welcome the challenge. It is impossible to reach high by aiming low. So let us keep our splendid goal firmly in mind and proceed with pragmatic optimism.
And it is with this optimism that SUTD and the Defence Ministry will set up 2 new centres. Temasek Laboratories will focus on building R&D in system design and development, whereas iTrust will look into cyber security research.
There will be opportunities for undergraduates to undertake leading-edge research under the mentorship of SUTD faculty while working on real-world problems related to the defense and security of our nation.
Dr. Tan said he's confident the university's unique pedagogy will equip young Singaporeans with the means to drive the future Singapore economy.
Singaporean entrepreneurs are joining a rush into China's first-tier cities like Shanghai for a cut of a growing fashion market. Our correspondent has more on this untapped sector.
Luxury brands abound in Shanghai, offering fashion choices for the rich. For those on a smaller budget, there are mass brands and wholesale markets. The lack of choice in the mid-price market is a good thing for designers such as Singaporean Danielle Wu.
Because there is a lack of talent in China at the moment, and there's so much demands for this group of people, a lot of young post-80s get really pushed up to, say, mid-level positions. So you suddenly realize a 25-year-old, say, drawing a pay of about, say, 20,000 RMB, which is equivalent to, say, 4,000 Sing, and having this money in their pockets with nowhere to spend.
Also cashing in on the opportunity is Gary Yip, who opened his store in Shanghai 8 months ago. He works with Chinese designers who stock their clothes in his store.
In the past, when you're affluent and everything and you're well-traveled, you always look for the West for inspiration. But right now, more and more, in terms of the target group, they're looking towards Asian influence, they're going back to their roots.
But it's still not easy doing business. Rental here is $2,800 per month. And it takes time to build up a customer base. Manufacturing costs are also going up by 5% every year. But that isn't stopping the many local and foreign independent designers who have set up shop in Shanghai in recent years. Designers are targeting an increasing number of consumers who are fashion-forward with a huge appetite for anything new and different. And many of these shoppers are also willing to travel off the beaten track to unexpected places like this one to search for their own unique fashion items. Nana and Bird is a pop-up store hidden inside an alleyway. Opened by 2 Singaporeans, it sells accessories with quirky designs. Prices range from $23 for a ring to $320 for a leather bag.
Some of them, they'll come in, the first question they'll ask me is, are you the only store in Shanghai that sell this product? I'll say yes. Then they're like, okay. Then to them, it's an additional reason for them to buy from me.
As young Chinese continue to become more fashion savvy and seek to differentiate themselves through fashion, industry players are optimistic demand for independent designs will continue to grow. Christine Lim, Channel News Asia, Shanghai.
And from retail therapy to a quick fix for students to beat exam fever. Now, these high school teens in Hubei, China are hooked up to IV drips in their classrooms. They are cramming for next month's crucial college entrance exams, which could determine their entire future. The amino acid infusions are supposed to help restore their energy levels. The local government reportedly gives each student a subsidy to receive the drip. And state media says the energy boosts are not believed to be harmful. In sport, after the break, Alex Ferguson hopes a history of animosity will spark QPR's boss to help turn the EPL title race. And the Avengers blows away the box office competition to set a new record in the US. In business news, Singapore's central bank says it's firmly committed to maintaining price stability over the medium term. This is intended to temper imported inflation, even as domestic inflation stays high due to supply constraints. MAS has been tightening monetary policy through a stronger Sing dollar since April 2010. Companies from Singapore and Colombia will have more opportunities to work together. This after a memorandum of understanding was signed between IE Singapore and Colombia's leading business association. Colombia was Singapore's 9th largest trading partner in Latin America and the Caribbean last year. And here are the market numbers. In sport, Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson is hoping history will help stop Manchester City from claiming the English Premier League title this Sunday. He points to what he calls the unethical sacking of Mark Hughes by Man City as a possible factor. Hughes was City manager till 2009 and is now QPR boss. QPR play at Man City in the last game of the season, and Ferguson says they have a chance as they fight to stay in the top flight. That's what Man City boss Roberto Mancini is wary of as well. Having written off his team's chances just a month ago when they were 8 points adrift of United, he says they may be favourites now, but things can change in just one game. City and United are level on points, but City have scored 8 more goals this season. So, if both teams win their final matches against QPR and Sunderland respectively, the EPL title will be decided on goal difference for the very first time. Superhero movie The Avengers has shattered US box office records, taking just over $200 million in its opening weekend. That makes it the top US opening of all time, beating the previous mark of $169 million held by the final Harry Potter film. Disney says it's now on target to join an elite club of billion-dollar movies, having already raked in some $640 million overseas. This is a fight back for Disney after the huge flop John Carter. It also validates Disney's $4 billion acquisition of Marvel Entertainment. The Avengers has an all-star cast including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, and is directed by cult favorite Joss Whedon. And that's all we have time for on News 5 tonight. Good night.